theyeshiva.net.
The Sanhedrin continued till almost the end of the Gemara. Yes.
Where was it located?
In Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael and in Bavel. The Sanhedrin went into Galus also.
So Rabbi and Meir, they came together, all the...
Yeah. But by the time of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, there was a real functioning Sanhedrin. It was after the Churban Beis HaMikdash. It wasn't in Yerushalayim anymore. The Sanhedrin went into Galus. It went from Yerushalayim to Yavna. It went to Tzipori, went back to Yavna. It went to a lot of places. There's a whole sugya in Rosh Hashanah. But there was a Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin continued for another few hundred years. But then it couldn't be sustained anymore. To have a Sanhedrin, you had to have Smicha, Ish Mepeyish, from Moshe Rabbeinu. You had to have Talmidim. It was just the Gzeiris. The Jews were getting scattered. They couldn't do it anymore. So they were Mavatal it.
Whenever you see the Chacham Amram, there was also the Sanhedrin.
Yeah. So these debates are not Stamab's debates somewhere in a corner. These were debates of the Chachmei Sanhedrin. No, they were members of the Sanhedrin.
Every machlokes was whenever you see machlokes, it was...
It's usually, this was an argument of Chachmei Sanhedrin. I mean, was it the argument right before the vote? Was it an argument previously? But it was an argument that, and they had to paskin la halacha. And
always like a Rosh Sanhedrin.
Yeah, always. Yeah, we know of the names. Yeah. You had the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, you had the Av Bezdin of the Sanhedrin, you had 71 people who had to make every major decision. When there was a decision about halacha, should we make this gzeira, shouldn't we make this gzeira? Is this the pshat in Torah, is this not the pshat in Torah? Should we make this takana? Chanukah candles. We like to, who decided to light Chanukah? We're reading the Megillah. All these things. These were takanas, and there were debates. Don't eat chicken with milk. Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, the Gemara says in Chulin, he held, you're allowed to eat chicken with milk. He ate chicken with milk. He said this gzeira is a foolish gzeira. Doesn't make sense. There was a vote. Rabbi Yossi HaGalili used to eat chicken with milk. The Gemara says clearly, you're allowed to eat chicken with milk, B'nai Torah. He felt that there's no need to compare chicken to meat. The Chachamim felt, no. Chicken is by people considered meat, and if you do chicken burgers, chicken cheeseburgers, you're going to end up doing meat cheeseburgers. But this was a real machlokes.
So when you stop eating chametz.
Same thing. When do you stop eating chametz? Yeah, same machlokes. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. When the issue of chametz begins, does the issue of chametz begin? Yeah. They had to debate. Yeah.
Is this why the Sfarim don't eat the fish? The same reason the fish went.
No, then there's later generations, everything changed, because then it's local stuff. Once the Sanhedrin was gone, everything became localized. So you'll have in this country, you have this. In this country, it's not. There was no central body to be Mechayev Klal Yisrael. They couldn't do it anymore. So Kitnius, in the Middle Ages, the Ashkenazim assert Kitnius on Pesach, right? Like beans and rice, legumes, what's called. They assert it because their fields they used to grow together with wheat, and they saw a lot of problems. The Sephardic communities never asked it, so that's why they don't have a problem with rice. If it would have been by the Sanhedrin, then it would be everybody. There's no mitzias. The Sanhedrin said something. B'dikas chametz is only Ashkenazim. Those are the thing. B'dikas chametz is every Jew. Why? Because it comes from the Sanhedrin. It comes from the Tanoim. All the takanas that come from then, you'll have every Jew. It'll be mechayev every Jew. There will never be differences. Anything that happened post that, for example, davening, you'll have Nusach Sfard, Nusach Ashkenaz, because it doesn't come from then.
So there were no different minhagim?
There could be different minhagim if the Sanhedrin didn't paskin.
Right, but once they passed, there was no such thing.
There couldn't be, no. You were Zaken Mamre if you went against it. You were Zaken Mamre. You didn't have a place in halacha. Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel argued, once the halacha is like Beis Hillel, you have to follow like Beis Hillel.
The first mission in Shas, that when Gil's sons wanted to become a Chaim, but it's Chacham. It was just a team.
Yeah.
So all the Tanur, all the names brought in
Sanhedrin.
All of them.
Most of them were in Sanhedrin, yeah.
The Gemara maps, the missions. The Gemara also.
It depends, but most of them, yeah.
So when was the last? When would you say that the last year of the Sanhedrin?
In the 400s, in the 5th century. Abaya and Rava, yeah. And by the way, Kiddush HaChodesh went. Kiddush HaChodesh was the same thing. There was no calendar. As long as there was a Sanhedrin, they had witnesses testify for the new moon. Same thing. They didn't use calendars.
By Rabbi, you said.
Yeah. Once the Sanhedrin was dissolved, so Kiddush HaChodesh was dissolved. They couldn't do it anymore. So now they had a calendar. That's what we use today. The Sanhedrin was dissolved, and the whole system changed. Since then, there was no mitzvah that the rabbi could make that's Mechayev Klal Yisrael. There's no such a thing anymore. There could be minhagim, there could be chumras, takanas. Even Rabbeinu Gershom, all his takanas, about marriage and this, it was Mechayev his kehillas, no all the other kehillas. Ba'asr de Rav is Rav, Ba'asr de Shmuel. You follow the Bezdin. But there's no one Bezdin that's Mechayev Klal Yisrael. No such a thing anymore. They can't do it. You can't do it anymore because for the Sanhedrin to function, you have to have that level of intensity and cohesiveness and unity that they couldn't sustain anymore. Talmidim who sit with years by the Rebbes and they have smicha, it was a whole system that they couldn't do anymore. To keep the Sanhedrin alive would have been a churban, because if it would have been hijacked, it's the end of it. The fact that they dissolved the Sanhedrin really saved the Jewish people. Just imagine in the 1800s, right? If there was a Sanhedrin and say the reform movement hijacked the Sanhedrin, what would have been done? What would have been? It would have been the end of halacha. They would have made a takana and that's it. It would have been the end. Because there was no Sanhedrin, so Adar nobody can hijack Yiddishkeit. It was a tremendous thing. Because even if country after country falls, so the reform, if there's one shtetl with a Rav and Talmidim and a Yeshiva with a Shulchan Aruch, they're not changing. And that's what happened. Napoleon forced the Jews to make a Sanhedrin, but it was a fake thing. I mean, they did it, the Karen Eire. Yeah, he wanted there should be matter intermarriage, and they made a Sanhedrin to appease him, but it wasn't a real thing. It was. He made a Sanhedrin, intermarriage should be mutter, Eretz Yisrael is not part of the agenda. Napoleon wanted him to change a lot of things, and then he would accept them. And they had one of the G'dolei Adar, Reb David, the Karen, one of the big poskim. He went and he basically ran it. He played a game. He played a game. He made a Sanhedrin, but he knew it wasn't real. It was just in the early 1800s. But the fact that there was no Sanhedrin protected the integrity.
Wouldn't it have kept everyone together?
No, because if you haven't Sanhedrin,
also you might have had also people that.
But you didn't. You didn't because there was an immune system. Because who got smicha to be in Sanhedrin? You had to get smicha from a previous generation, and those people had real Torah authority. When Rabbi Akiva is giving you smicha, when Rabbi Meir is giving you smicha, these were people who got smicha from the previous ones all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. They didn't give smicha they gave smicha to people who were Goinim and Yerushalayim and so forth. Can there be once in a while somebody who was corrupt? Yeah, but the system was a very holistic system. The system worked. Adar Yom Hazeh it works.
So everyone respected this.
Yeah, even today you'll see it works. Let's say there's a Rav of an Orthodox Shul, a real Orthodox Shul. And one Shabbos he says, today we're bringing in the piano, right? And instead of tefillin on Sunday, we're putting on tefillin on Shabbos, He lives in America. Nobody can do anything. But what's going to happen? Nobody's going to take him seriously anymore as a authority of halacha because there's a Shulchan Aruch. Let's say even, chas v'shalom, 10,000 rabbis go corrupt and they decide to change halacha. It's not going to affect Yiddishkeit. As long as you have the books, it's not going to affect it. It means this guy is not interested. Fine. Let's say he schleps with him 1 million people. That's what the Reform did. They schlepped millions of people with them. It didn't affect it. I mean, it affected it in reality, of course, for millions of Jews, but it didn't affect the purity and the integrity of halacha. As long as we could trace back every minute. You go back to the Poskim, you go back to Shulchan Aruch, you go to the Torah, you go to the Rambam, you go to the Rishonim, you go to the Gemara, you go to the Mishnah, you go to the Psukim, you see it. I can't change it. Somebody can come tomorrow and say there's no Chiyuv B'dikas Chametz anymore now on the night of before Pesach. We're changing the halacha. It's going to be a joke. I mean, you could say it, but it's not real. The immune system of halacha is one that can't be broken by anybody. Because they wrote everything down. If they wouldn't have written down...
So if you write down the new things and then generations from now...
No, but they didn't only write it down. They showed exactly how it developed. Exactly. They didn't just write down, this is the halacha you have to do b'dikas chametz. Yeah? The Gemara pointed out why, when, who said, why a candle, why not a candle, why by day, why... You understand how they did it? And we know the names. We know who said bittul, who said b'dika, when, how, what. Everything is with names. So you can't forge it. You can't forge it. A guy today could say, I'm being mevatel halach. It's not going to be taken seriously.
Yet the Reform did schlep away.
But there was no argument to it. The Reform said it's a new age, and we want to be accepted. Yeah, they didn't have a real argument to it.
But they didn't refute any of them.
What did they refute? What they said? Well, you're allowed to be Machal Shabbos. What Shabbos is Sunday? They didn't. You understand?
And the Mahalach saying this is
yeah. So even if somebody wants to change halacha today, it's not going to have value because the system is so clear. Everything has a source. You can trace it back all the way to the generations. There's nothing, you can't play games with it. Anything we do or we don't do, we know exactly when it started, how it started, why it started, by whom it started. Now argue with that. If you can argue with that, fine. Yeah. There could be arguments that they'll argue today about quinoa. What's the bracha on quinoa? Fine. That's a real argument. Are you allowed to eat quinoa on Pesach? Okay. Those are good arguments, right? Those are real arguments. Things that come up today, electricity questions, IVF. These are new things, but so they had to dissolve the Sanhedrin. By dissolving the Sanhedrin and writing everything down in detail, everything is secure. Now nobody can play games with it. What am I going to do? Burn every Gemara in the world? Burn every Shulchan Aruch in the world? It's just not. That was the power. That's what they did. The vision was unbelievable how they did it, because it secured the eternity. When you had a real Sanhedrin happening, you didn't need this because you had live communities, and it was fine. It was very good. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi already saw the beginning of the end, so he wrote everything down in Mishnayos. Why did he mention all the machloikasin? Because he wanted everybody to understand. This is this shitta, that's that shitta, v'chuli. Your typhus, it's very important this, how it worked.
And we realized we see machloikasin in the Gemara, I didn't realize.
Yeah. That's why the machloikasin are so important. People wonder, you learn all these machlokes and like, what do you want? Just tell me what to do. No, they don't tell you what to do. If they would tell you what to do, I can also make a book today and say what to do. Thank you. Verbistu, they don't do that. They never tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you everything, and you'll see what happened. You right away see that it's MS. It wasn't stam. A Rav got up and said, okay, today we're being by the comments. It doesn't work like that. Who are you? Who comes to? Why did you say it? What was your source? Did anybody argue with you? And then you can say there's a machlokes, there's a halacha. That's why the system of Gemara is so intricate that everything was recorded. There's no loopholes. There's no like somebody, creeped in and did his own thing. Nobody made their own malava malka here. Everything is documented, recorded. Yeah, even Rabbi Yehuda, you say that. What's your shit? You really hold like this? You don't hold like this? Everything is always gecheshbon to the diuk, because then you could trust it. Such a thing you can trust. You see that nobody is manipulating the system. There's nobody who has a little money, who has a little cover, has some buildings, and he's manipulating it. There's no manipulation. What are you manipulating, right? And you see it constantly. But the Gemara finished, it went on to the next level. Yeah, the Rishonim, they did exactly the same thing. They wrote everything, the arguments, and the Nachrainim, and that's how they did it. It was a very, very powerful way of maintaining the emes of it. And it's indisputable. You could say, I'm not interested in it. That you could say. But if you're interested in the truth, this is the truth of how Yiddishkeit developed. It's not like, it wasn't a Hefgewelt where somebody sat down and decided we're making new mitzvahs today. We're making new halachas today. We're asering this, we're asering that. It doesn't work that way. You don't aser things. Vu, vas, ven.
The interesting thing is they have to heshbon the whole thing, what's going to be centuries after.
Yes.
That's the tremendous war.
Yeah, they saw. It says, Eis lasas lashem hefeiru teresecha. Torah Shabbat was not supposed to be written down, because they wanted the living connection between Rebbe and Talmidim. It was very alive. But he realized if it's not going to be written down, then ultimately you'll have charlatans and con artists, and it's done. Your Yiddishkeit is done. Chaim Yankel, smart guy, is going to get up in his place, and he's going to make his Yiddishkeit. He has a Messiah. The word Messiah. What does the word Messiah mean? Messiah means, I want to see the Messiah. You have to see the Messiah. If you could show it to me, it's Messiah. Messiah doesn't mean I'm in a bad mood, I'm in an angry mood, I need to get rid of my brother or get rid of somebody else. I have my own traditions. It doesn't work that way. Then it becomes tyranny. It becomes an exercise in power. And people don't trust it. The reason people trusted halacha and rabbanim and bezdin is because the integrity. There was a commitment to emes. I'm not here to make my rules. I'm not trying to control my community. I'm trying to do the right thing.
Is this why you have the source, you're very makbid on source sheets and online, every
That's why I'm very makbid on sources, always. I just feel it's much more respectful when there's a source for everything. You could see, Yeah.
And all your essays.
And then you could say, and this is an idea that I think based on it, fine. But you know what says, what doesn't say, what's quoted, what's not quoted, what's your chiddush, what's not your chiddush.
Tremendous responsibility for all the generations that ahead to.
That they knew the responsibility. Because they knew the responsibility, that's why they didn't cut corners. They didn't cut corners. Take Masechta Pesachim. They could have written the night before Pesach, you do b'dikas chametz and you use a candle. No, how do you know a candle? Why by night? What do you have to check? What do you have to check? Do bittul? I mean, all these things. V'chuli. There's nothing mamash taken for granted. Even this thing that we learned today. They sold flour in Yerushalayim. Reb Meir said it was against the rules. Reb Yehuda says it was pro the rules. Even that. There was nothing they ignored. Is it right to sell flour in Yerushalayim or not? Reb Meir said it's not a good thing. They don't have permission. Reb Yehuda says you're wrong. It's your opinion. It's not true. The Chachamim were very happy about it. Now remember, they can argue about this because they lived after the Beis Hamikdash. They lived 100 years after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, so they weren't there by the Karban Omer. Right? Yerushalayim was already, nobody was in Yerushalayim anymore. People were there, but it wasn't that same thing. So they were arguing 150, 200 years ago. Rabbi Yehuda said it was fine. Rabbi Meir said it wasn't fine. It wasn't a Geil Halacha L'Maisa for them. But even that, they're arguing about. Even that. It seems like an insignificant thing. People are selling flour. They're selling flour. Rabbi Yehuda says it's fine. Rabbi Meir says, no, it's asur. You see, it's just... and everyone has a reason for it. I say this, you say this. There's a reason. It's not stam, I decided it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. I don't like you, so maybe your flour becomes asur. There's no such a thing. There's no agendas. That's another thing. How do you know there's no agendas? People have agendas, yeah? I don't like you. You own most of the groceries. I make the flour asur. So it's a joke. It's a joke. Don't do it with God. Stam. So that's why it's very, very important that everything was documented with a reason, with a svara, how it developed. You could trust it. Torah is something you can trust because it's all open. You don't believe it? Investigate. There's no such a thing. Azoi. Investigate. There's nothing in Yiddishkeit, not even a minhag. I'm not talking about Meshagasan that people have. Meshagasan, not Meshagasan. And even they sometimes have a mucker, maybe a little distorted. But there's nothing in Yiddishkeit, Adar Yom Hazeh, 3,500 years later, that you can't document and trace back to the exact date, time, place, person. Nothing, mamish nothing. Mamish nothing. Even the smallest things that seem insignificant. Everything. And if a taka can't be, so then you know that it doesn't, there's no source for it. Huh? Yeah, it's not mechayiv. Sure. And it's important because people don't know the difference of a doiraisa, a derabanan, a minig, a chumra, a hidur, a mishagas, OCD, obsessions. They don't know the difference. Yeah? They think if they don't do this, it's already like being Mechal Shabbos and eating pork and eating on Yom Kippur and intermarrying and converting to Catholicism. There's a mahalach, there's a doiraisa, there's a derabanan, there's a mitzvah medivri seifrim, there's a minig, there's a takana, there's a chumra, there's a hidur, there's a chumra for one community, wasn't for other communities. Especially when it comes to Pesach. Especially Pesach is the Yom Tov of chumras, right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So in Rav's Bezdin, Rav Paskin, this is how he did it. This is how his Bezdin did it. This is what the people around him did. Yeah. And Shmuel Paskin and that he did. But then they had to take a vote.
After the vote.
No, because there was one Bezdin though. So
Everybody has to do like the vote.
Yeah.
So why did Rav still continue?
No, he didn't. He usually.
I stayed up in Brooklyn, yeah. You keep that. Guys came in that.
Rosh Hashanah. And he did it. Daf Chafei. Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua had an argument when Yom Kippur is, right? And Rabbi Gamliel told Rabbi Yeshua, come on Yom Kippur with your money and your stick and your bag. And what did he do? He came. Amar Rabbi Gamliel v'noshkoi al roishai. He kissed him on his head. And he called him Rabbi v'Talmidi. You're my Talmud because you did what I said. But you're my Rebbe because you know more than me, huh?
Told them. Only did it because.
Yeah, and it said Rabbi Shul was depressed, Meitzar, he was very upset, and he met Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva told him, Eila moyad Hashem asher tikru oisam b'moyadam. Al tikru oisam ala atem. Atem afilu shoygin, atem afilu mezidin, atem afilu mutayin. The same Rebbeinu Shalom who made the moon said that Yom Tif is based on Bezdin. Rabbi Gamliel is the Sanhedrin. If Sanhedrin says this is Yom Kippur, it's not Yom Kippur, it's not the 10th day of Tishrei, it's irrelevant. Because the whole reason you're doing Yom Kippur is because the Torah said, listen to Bezdin. You say Bezdin is making a mistake, it's still Yom Kippur. As long as the mistake is L'Shem Shamayim, in other words, if it's a mistake because I'm not interested, then they're not Bezdin. They're a bunch of crooks. You understand? But if it's a real Bezdin, they made a mistake. According to you, they made a mistake. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, it's irrelevant. So that's exactly a case. Rabbi Yeshua disagreed, and he still followed Rabbi Gamliel. Because Achirabim Lahatos, if the Bezdin would have voted not like that, they wouldn't have been Mekadosh the Chodesh, then he wouldn't have listened. And Rabbi Akiva is the one who told it to him. Without that, there would be no system. The Torah says Achirabim Lahatos. If you can't follow the majority of the Sanhedrin, then everything would be a machloikas forever.
So there was a lot of small Bezdins. Every Rav had his own Bezdin.
Well, after the Sanhedrin was dissolved, there was no more one big Bezdin. Well, but there was a Sanhedrin, they could convene and decide a bunch of stuff. But yeah, when the Sanhedrin was dissolved, it went to different cities.
Like the Supreme Court.
Yeah, like the Supreme Court. The Mechayiv, the whole country, the whole nation, yeah. The Rambam, in his introduction to Mishnah Torah and Mishnayos, has the whole arichas, the history on this. Huh? Yeah, the Mishnah Torah and Sefer Pirush Mishnayos.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.